couple folks in the Bible. So my opening question is this. As you hear the scriptures, as you read the Bible, is there someone that you're particularly attracted to? Besides the main ones, Jesus, Joseph, Mary, the disciples, is there a minor character in the Bible that speaks to you personally, that maybe if you had a chance, you'd like to sit down and have a cup of coffee with? So who would that person be in the Bible that you'd like to sit down with, have lunch with, have a cup of coffee with? Job. Okay. Mary Magdalene.
Woman at the well.
The woman at the well. Yep. Lydia. Isaiah. Samuel. David. Daniel. Those would all be, I think, wonderful conversations to sit there leisurely and just have a conversation with them. A couple of people that I would like to have a conversation with, we just met in today's Bible reading. And I'd heard of them before, Eldad and Medad, but never really paid them any heed. Until one Sunday, I was at St. Paul's in Milwaukee. And the reader that day was a woman from South Carolina who always read with energy and drama. And she read the first part of the passage, and then she paused. And suddenly she said, "My Lord, Moses, tell him to stop." Now, I fully expected her to say, "My Lord Moses, tell him to stop," like any Episcopalian, but no, "My Lord." And, as you may have heard in this passage, what happens is Moses complains to God and said, "I can't do this alone." And God says, "Fine, I'll give you 70 others on our team who will be anointed with my spirit and will work with you." And Moses gathers them around the tent of the presence. And the cloud of presence comes, and God's spirit comes upon them. They all prophesy, and they're empowered to help Moses in the leadership. But 2 didn't show up. They stayed home. Why did they stay home? We don't know. Were they sick that day? Were they watching the Bills game? Did Eldad say to me, "Dad, Moses isn't the boss of me. I'm tired of him telling me what to do." Somehow they didn't show up. And still, the Spirit of God anointed them. They prophesied. They were empowered to help in that ministry. And I realized after that, "My Lord, Moses" thing, that I see echoes in my life of Eldad and Medad. They didn't show up. They didn't do things the right way. They didn't play by the rules. And still, God poured out his Spirit upon them. A few quick examples from my life. About a year after I was ordained, my wife and I in Colorado went on a Cursillo weekend. If you don't know Cursillo, it's a short course we used to have in our diocese. It's a wonderful, wonderful program. We were very much moved by it. When we moved to Albany, we discovered Cursillo was very active. So I offered to serve on a team. And I was asked, "Tell me about your experience with Cursillo." Well, I said, "My wife and I went together." "Oh, you went on a couples weekend?" "We did." "Well, we usually have men's and women's separate here." "Okay. What else can you tell me about your weekend?" "Well, it was Friday, Saturday, Sunday." "A 3-day weekend?" No, we do a 4-day weekend here. A 3-day weekend doesn't count. You aren't qualified to be on team in Albany. So I said, "Oh, okay. Well, how about if I go on a weekend and then I could be team?" No, you've already been. You can't go again." There's a way we do it in Albany. That door slammed shut. As it turned out in our lives, after a weekend of marriage encounter, my wife and I were invited to participate in a program called Engage Encounter. And for 25 years, we traveled across the country working with teams to help couples get off to a good start in their marriage. when I was in seminary, I was jogging around the lake with a classmate. When I run, I don't talk. I can listen. My friend loved to talk and ask questions, and never light questions. We're jogging around the lake, and he says, "Have you ever been born again?" I said, I think so. He said, "Tell me about it." So I described for him how, at a time when I was in my late teens, my friends were dark, cynical friends. My outlook on life was so negative that I'd reached a point where I thought life wasn't worth living. And then one night, I had a dream or a vision where I found myself walking to the edge of a cliff. And God was showing me, either you can step off in the end, or turn around where everything was dark and start life anew. And I knew somehow that also meant severing ties with people who've been my friends for over 4 years. I stood there for what seemed like ages, and then decided, no, I don't know what life is truly about. I'm going to choose life, not death. And as I turned around, with each step I took, it got lighter and lighter. And where I expected to see rocks, I saw lush vegetation. And then as the sun came over the horizon, I was filled with an incredible symphonic music that filled the marrow of my bones. I popped out of bed. I have never felt more alive than that day when I woke up. And I knew that my life had turned 180 degrees in a new direction. I knew nothing about God. I hungered for God. I wanted to be with and follow the one who is the way, the truth, and the life. So I said, I felt born again that day. To which my friend jogged along says, "Did you say the sinner's prayer?" I said, I didn't know there was a sinner's prayer then. All I know is that life was dark and then it was bright. I've had no regrets since then. I felt born again. No, you didn't say the sinner's prayer. You're not born again. A different friend asked me one day, he said, "Do you have a prayer language?" I said, "You mean talking in tongues?" He said, "Yes." I said, "Well, sort of." I said, there are a couple occasions when I was just singing God's praise on my own, and I ran out of words, and I just sang in this unknown tongue. But it only happened twice. But the main time, I was at a prison in Ciudad Juarez, and as we prayed for the prisoners, I felt like liquid light was coming to the ceiling, and I raised my hands, and in doing so, an energy came from the very depth of my being, and I burst forth an unknown tongue in glossolalia. And then when it stopped, the light went out, my tongue stopped, and within an instant, I was invited to go across the courtyard and evangelize the American prisoners. Something I don't normally do, but I did it. What's more, when I returned home in Colorado, I felt led to and empowered to gather all the other clergy in the city to start an outreach center to reach the least, the last, the marginalized. I said, that hasn't happened since, but I consider that speaking in tongues. Well, no, that doesn't really count. You should be able to do it whenever you want to. I said, well, I've wanted to, but it just hasn't happened. Yeah, I'll pray for you. I identify with Eldad and Medad. We don't know why they didn't show up. We don't know why they didn't according to the rules. But God still poured out His Spirit upon them. We call that grace. Even when we work against God, as Paul did, God reaches out to us. So my question for you is, there are still Eldads and Medads around us in the world. When you encounter an Eldad and Medad, how do you respond? Do you embrace them? Do you explain the rules to them? Do you walk away from them? Where do they fit into your life? They experience God's grace. May that grace guide us and shape us in God's holy name. Amen.